everyone, and welcome to Nom Watch Review, part of the Nom Talk network. On this show, we review the latest film drop or a throwback celebrating a milestone while eating and drinking our favorite movie snacks or drinks. I'm Jen, your host, and right now I am enjoying one of my favorite movie snacks, some delicious M&Ms and some water because it's been one of those days. So we're just going to stick with water. And I would love to introduce my guests for tonight. I have Amanda, I have Toni, and I have Puma, who is dressed for the occasion because tonight we are going to be talking about 1993's Hocus Pocus. So I am very excited. I love this movie so much. Amanda, tell us what you're snacking on and drinking tonight.
I'm snacking on my dinner that I brought home from work because I just got home, and water because it's hot out, and
It
water.
is. It sure is. Puma, how about you?
So I guess I'm the lush here. I know I told everybody before if they ever see me drinking anything besides whiskey that I'm a scroll. So I have to recant that for this one occasion. I'm drinking vodka because that's all I had.
Or you're
so
actually a scroll.
Vodka and energy drink. I needed like a little hair of the dog from last night. It's one of those nights. So hair of the dog. And I'm eating blueberry gluten-free waffles because gluten hates me. Yeah.
Awesome. And Toni, what are you snacking on and drinking tonight?
I ate all my snacks. I don't have snacks on this thing, but yeah, I did have mango and tahini, and it was delicious. It was, and now all I have is just sad water. So
that actually sounds really good for how hot it is right now. I just M&Ms were as Halloween and Hocus Pocusy as I could get in this house. I don't keep a lot of candy in the house, and I saw a beer in the fridge, but I'm still con crunching for Comic-Con and I have sewing to do after this. So there's just no way that was going to work out for me. Yeah. So, and then also I do want to remind everybody before we get started, this month we are fundraising for the Trevor Project, a nonprofit organization focused on suicide prevention efforts among LGBTQIA youth. So please, if you are able to, donate to that really wonderful, worthy cause. So let's get started. All right, this film, and I'm going to say this phrase. So this film came out right after I graduated high school. This film is 30 years old, and I feel really old thinking about that because I was like, oh, throwback. Oh, God. I don't know that I saw this movie in the theaters when it first came out. So it was a while. It was at least on VHS by the time I saw it. Toni, when was the first time you saw this movie? What are your memories of first seeing this movie?
I know exactly where I was. I know exactly what I was wearing too. My mom has some college friends from Holland, Michigan. And so there were a few summers where we would trek all the way from Florida, all the way up to Holland, Michigan. And Holland is just kind of like a typical, very small, mid-sized town. It's got a couple of movie theaters. They really lean into the whole, like, we're called Holland, therefore there's a few windmills and some wooden shoes you can buy at assorted places kind of thing. I'm hoping that that's because, they actually have a history of some sort associated with the country, but I don't know. It just kind of also seemed a little tourist trappy to me at times. But anyways, there was this fantastic movie theater, and I don't know if it's still there. I have not been back in a very, very long time, but it was a glorious 1990s movie theater. I mean, it was brand new. It was, gray tile, these awesome, fantastic gray columns, the amazing like glass ceiling, some neon in there. It had like the full marquee where all the shows were you could see what time everything was, because we don't do that anymore. We don't have marquees anymore, which is crazy how much I miss that. The food concession stand was like right in the middle of the lobby. It wasn't like at the front, it was in the middle, so you had like this nice glorious little Wizard of Oz walk through to the concession stand, and then from there you would disperse to these different over here in the East Wing you have these theaters, and over there in the West Wing. So it was just this very impressive. But now when I think about it, I'm like, it wasn't anything huge. It was probably only like a 9 theater, sort of setup. It was, typical for a town of that size. But I just remember it being like really amazing. And my mom, she loved to drop us off at the movie theaters, and there was a shopping center right next to it, like a little plaza, because we were like, we don't want to go shopping with you, we want to go to the movies. So and I wore like my favorite blue and white little romper dress. It was one of those like rompers that had a skirt over it, and it was white with blue floral, and there were awesome little lace detailings. I was adorable. I wore my little earrings. I don't know why it was so vivid in my mind, but maybe it's because I walked in and gosh, what was playing? Hocus Pocus was playing. I went to go see that. What else was playing? Was Jurassic Park also 1993? Is that what I remember being? So everyone was not watching. Nobody was watching Hocus Pocus. They went next door to see Jurassic Park. And I just remember that, people were very hyped in that theater. There were also a couple of other things also playing. This was a pretty busy summer, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, it was a really awesome, good vibe. And it's like literally one of my most there's nothing particular about these memories. I just remember thinking like, oh yeah, that's what my childhood really, really felt like. And it was vivid and amazing. And yeah, Hocus Pocus, Holland, Michigan, 1993.
Wow, that is vivid. I probably saw it in the fall in some dank TV room at University of San Francisco where we stole somebody's VCR and hooked it up. Yeah, I wish I had that vivid of a memory of the first time I saw it. That's awesome though. Puma, how about you? What was the first time you saw Hocus Pocus? What was that like?
So I got to see it like when it first, I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it on Disney. I discovered it. I was probably like 4 or 5 when I first saw it. And it was like, Halloween's always been my favorite holiday. My mom wasn't really big on like celebrating any holidays, but specifically the devil's holiday. So it was kind of like my little guilty pleasure. I'd have to like sneak and go watch this movie. Like, so my mom wouldn't yell at me. Eventually, she kind of started watching it with me too over the years. But yeah, so I saw it in like when it first came out in '93, and it's just like I just remember being like this cat that talks. I had a huge crush on Thackeray. I named one of my little dream babies. I don't know if anybody remembers that brand, but there was like these little babies. I named my baby Thackeray after him. Like I was like, I'm gonna have his babies. Like it was insane. But yeah, so I loved the movie from day one. I've always watched it. I watch it every single year. Every time it's almost Halloween, I'm like, Hocus Pocus. When it comes out, that's when it's like pumpkin time, because like that's when you get to watch it multiple times. So yeah, I love it since day one. One of my favorite movies ever. It's just great. It's 90s. It's like the epitome of 90s in every way possible. It's just amazing.
That's true. We're going to take a quick break before we get to when Amanda first saw it. And Cue Ball says water is not sad, Toni, and Heartless has redeemed hydrate. So we're going to hydrate real quick before we get to Amanda. All right. Amanda, what was your first time seeing Hocus Pocus?
My memory of seeing Hocus Pocus is also pretty vivid. I grew up in the Bronx, but in Westchester, which was very close by, they had just opened the new multiplex. And I mean, weeks before. And it was the first time a movie theater had like a candy bar near us. And so I remember Hocus Pocus coming out because I always thought it was weird that a Halloween movie came out in July. But I did get to go see it with like, they give you like most candy, big candy stores, you'd get like a baggie and then they, pour all the candy in and weigh it. So we're all just like sitting here with these like giant bags of candy because they were pricing it very low and it was the 90s. But I was probably like 10 when this movie came out. And I do remember being slightly scared in certain scenes where like when you first see Doug Jones' character, the zombie kind of freaked me out a little bit. And then the Madonna thing was weird.
Right.
And I know she was like super hot, at that time, but it was also like, am I supposed to be watching? Like, should I be seeing this right now? Is this appropriate? But also like the first time they used the word virgin in a Disney movie. And I remember looking at my mom and going, like, I was 10. So yeah, it was, I saw it when it first came out. It was a good memory. It was a fun time. But I do watch it every year.
and Andy in the chat shared that his first viewing experience for this film was about a year after the release on VHS. It was a blockbuster visit, Super Nintendo, and this movie over a weekend watch with his brother. So sounds like there's a lot of good memories around this movie. I really wish I could remember when I first saw it, but at some point it just became an annual viewing tradition for me. I think I just grabbed it on DVD one year and then Blu-ray, and just now I just watch it. Sometimes I'll just watch it because I feel like it. But it is a very enjoyable movie. So for me, I gave it 4 popcorn buckets. I just think it's a solid classic, and it's a great Halloween movie. It puts me in that spooky time mood. And yeah, it was released in July. And I had this conversation in a Disney group on Facebook, and somebody brought up a really good point. Sure, it was released in July, which means right about October, it would come out on VHS, which means it would probably sell really well on VHS. So that might have been actually the reason they released it in the theaters. Also in 1993, I'm not sure exactly when, maybe September, but Nightmare Before Christmas also was released. So maybe they didn't want those two competing with each other also. So yeah, I gave it 4 out of 5 popcorn buckets, just because it's just such a fun, campy Halloween movie. Probably a little more adult than it was marketed, in my opinion. Not when I was 17, because for me, I was just like, yeah, this movie's great. And had I been younger, I would have been like, I'm getting away with something that I shouldn't be watching. So, you know, just enjoyable. I let my kids watch it probably when they were younger than they should have been watching it, but you know, that's just what you do with Disney. Toni, how about you? How many popcorn buckets?
I do just want to go ahead and point out one thing, because I did quickly, I was like, what was in the theater in summer 1993?
You looked
So
it
I
up?
just wanted to point out that I had the best summer ever, because this is what was happening in summer 1993, okay? Surf Ninjas, The Sandlot, Sidekicks, Life with Mikey, Super Mario Brothers, Rookie of the Year, Last Action Hero, Dennis the Menace, Free Willy, and Jurassic Park. And that's just from a list of like the 100 best like grossing movies of like 1993. And I just happened to pick all the kids movies that I definitely know for a fact that I don't know if Jurassic Park was a kids movie. Probably not. My mom definitely didn't let me go see that, so shame on her. But
I definitely saw every single one of those movies in the theater.
So like prime, awesome, like children's programming was happening in summer 1993. But anyways, nice. I give this movie 4 out of 5 as well. I adore this movie. I miss these kinds of movies, these mid-budget, 1990s movies that are firmly 90 minutes, no more than 100 minutes. Like, I miss that. I love that. Let's go back to that. I remember just having such a blast, and we've talked about this before, Jen. I think it was probably with our conversation around The Sandlot. I miss when movies used to treat kids with a sense of intelligence. They would go ahead and allow, children, Vanessa Shaw and I can't remember the name of the actor who plays the brother, but they're firmly like 17, 18-year-old kids, kids like almost legal adults. But we're supposed to feel like they're in danger. We're supposed to feel like they're doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. That's what Halloween is all about. I mean, very few of us were on our best behavior during Halloween, and I definitely feel like that this movie really tapped into that. And it just felt like, yeah, what could be the most ridiculous, horrifying, strange, and silly thing that might happen to you if you're not under adult supervision? And I feel like that this movie just kind of like hit every single one before they concluded at that 90-minute mark. So I just really, really enjoyed it. I love how there were some actual stakes. Like, it's not just, oh no, you could be under the spell of an evil witch. Like, no, you could die, and they will die. And they are soul cannibals. I don't know how that works, but they are in some way cannibalistic. So it just felt real. I remember going back to it after a while, and I completely forgot that there's that whole hanging scene in the beginning. And I was like, that's intense, especially for being on Disney Plus now, because for as much as people complain about some like inappropriate content for kids these days, I'm just like, do you guys not remember the 90s? You not remember what you guys just used to market to us, like firmly 9-year-old child? yeah, so I dig this movie. I think it's a perfect little time capsule of all the things that I miss about that particular era of filmmaking. And yeah, it taps into all the things that I love about Halloween.
Absolutely. Amanda, how about you? What's your popcorn rating for this movie?
My popcorn rating's 5. I have always loved this movie. And just to touch on what Toni was saying about them being adults, Omri Katz, which is who played the brother, was 16 at the age of filming and was actually starting to play around with drugs and was high during the scene where he lights the black flame candle and Kenny Ortega was like, "Are you high right now?" And he was like, "No." So there's like, little known
How
facts.
dare you, Kenny Ortega?
But it was, like everyone's kind of said, it really was just like the epitome of the 90s. And I think for me, it also hit home in a bit of a different way because I grew up in New York, but I'm from California. So I moved from Hollywood, not into a small town like that, because the Bronx is not a small town, but the area of the Bronx that I lived in was, a lot of homes and a lot of older people who have been in the town forever and a lot of kids. So it felt to me like I had made the same transition, and so it was like, oh, I actually relate to these characters kind of in that way. Like you've gone from big city living, like living in West Hollywood before I moved to New York at 6, 7 years old, which is a little bit more of Thora Birch character's age, but like, it was like, oh, now I'm that kid who like came from Hollywood and is living in the small town and trying to adjust to like small town life. So it hit for me a different way, but and it still kind of does. And I actually watched it again last night, just so that I was like super refreshed on it, because 4th of July is over, spooky season has officially started.
Starts July 5th, absolutely. Yes. Puma, what was your popcorn rating for this one?
I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5 because it's just there's something majestic about that movie. I don't know how to like explain it. It's just kind of like it's a really feel-good movie. It was my introduction to Doug Jones as an actor. He's insanely talented. I didn't realize he had done almost like every single character of my childhood up till now, like until I actually like was like, wow, he's done every single thing. You just never see his face. And so yeah, just Bette Midler, the songs are so like iconic. It was filmed really well. It was just like, really grainy, gritty. Like I love everything about that movie. There's not one thing I'm like, oh, I know a lot of people give it like crap sometimes and critique it and stuff like that, but it's just like for it standing alone at that time, there wasn't really anything like that. And people have kind of tried to replicate that as the years have gone by, and it doesn't really hit the same. Like there's just something about that film that will always have like a special place. So yeah, 5 out of 5 for sure. The actors are great. Yeah.
Another fun fact, by the way, and again, Disney, this was Disney. We had all grown up with Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and these animated classics, which were very, very Disney, to a film that uses the word virgin and has zombies and cannibal witches. One of my favorite scenes was the scene where Billy Butcherson finally cuts the stitches on his mouth. Fun fact, those were real moths flying out of his mouth. They, like Kenny Ortega had rigged some kind of contraption that was actually in his mouth that was holding the moths. They were real moths. There were 4 of them.
Oh my gosh.
That's gross.
I had no idea.
I thought you were going to say something about the words he called her. That's
Charlie. Okay. Yeah, that's great. The script is amazing.
He called her like a trollop, and
there was some language for sure. Although when you watch it on Disney Plus now, anything you watch on Disney Plus, there's always now that warning. It's like, whatever. But when I watched it again last night, because I look for those, the only real warning was cigarette usage.
Oh.
Yeah. So
and how did they get by with the bus driver line about where she's like, we want children, and well, I can do it, but it might take me a while. I was like, what?
Oh, there was so much innuendo in that movie.
It's so good.
It is. So the movie starts out in 1693 on Halloween. And you know, the Sanderson sisters, they're middle aged for the witches. I don't know. They're not their young and beautiful selves. But what iconic casting. Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, one of my all-time favorites, Kathy Najimy. I adore her. I think she's so great. And they have this little girl in their cottage. They're going to drain her life force. Her brother's trying to save her, who, by the way, when he grows up, becomes an agent on NCIS, which took me a long time to make that connection. And I can't even remember the character's name now because I haven't in a million years, but it always would make me laugh when I would watch Hocus Pocus to see him. And, you know, they have this spell they have to do, and Thackeray thwarts their plans. And it's kind of a grim opening to this movie, because at my age, I'd read The Crucible in high school. So I'm watching this movie as an older kid knowing about the Salem witch trials, and I'm like, this is a kid's movie. Like, what are we teaching children? And obviously it doesn't go into that in the movie, but I had that kind of different perspective of it. And I thought it was interesting that that's kind of what Disney chose to go with. But I think that kind of speaks to how Disney always does a really good job making stuff that is multi-layered, where I could enjoy it as a 17-year-old. And, you know, you all were much younger when you saw it, but still, to this day, we all still really love this movie. And it just kind of shows how they can make such an endearing movie, even though it started off so dark. We all took something a little different away from it. But yeah, so Thackeray sneaks into the cabin, and he's trying to stop the witches from killing his sister. And they turn him into a really pretty little kitty cat that I would adopt, absolutely. And the mob gets to their door, but they're too late to save anybody. And then the hanging scene that was mentioned earlier. But still, Winifred's able to cast that spell, and they can't stop her from that. So and again, the use of the word virgin, that does crack me up too, because, you know, how many people had to explain that to their kids? Worse, how many people didn't? I know nobody needed to explain it to me, and if I'd been younger, they probably wouldn't have needed to either. We learned all we needed to know in school in the 90s. So, you know, but from your perspective, Amanda, as someone who was the new kid, how did that scene when he's dealing with the bullies, like, so now we've flashed forward 300 years, he got rejected by Vanessa Shaw's character, Allison, and he's in the graveyard. We know where it's headed, because, you know, they're obviously not going to ignore the witches, and we've seen this backstory. Did you feel it was predictable? Like, was it something that you could see coming? You know, Ice, and I can't remember the other guy's name. Ice stuck out to me more because I know he goes on to be in Buffy, so I remember that kid more than I remember the blonde guy with the stringy hair, but also it's, you know, shaved into the back of his head. But they're both, you know, they are kind of funny, those two bullies, in a way, because they're just so dumb. Like all high school bullies were. But of course, now that you say that he was experimenting with drugs, I have like this different take on all of his scenes in my head. But as the new kid in town, like, how did those scenes resonate with you, just more individually, not just as a whole?
I mean, there was, I think, a little bit of a predictability factor. Like, you know, you move into a town, especially where everybody has been together since preschool, you know, so everybody's aging together and everybody's going to the same schools. They've all known each other from years. And then here you come, you know. I thought I was cool because my parents worked in entertainment, and like I had just spent the last year of my life partying with Arsenio Hall, true story, because my mom was his publicist, and like going to school and, like, you know, telling people, because I was 7 when I moved to the Bronx, you know, and in starting first grade or second grade, and, you know, thinking I was hot shit. and they're just like, whatever, like nobody cares, you're not cool. I didn't, know the kid was going to get his shoes stolen because that was a little weird, but like there was definitely a little bit of like, oh, I remember those days when I was watching the movie. Like, I remember being that kid, and you come from Hollywood to a small town, and you definitely think that you've got to level up on people, whether it's conscious or not. And I have no idea where any of them are now. I've not kept in touch with a single person that I like spent my formidable years with, but yeah, I mean, it hits a little bit differently. I also wanted to mention that you mentioned how amazing this casting was before,
Yes.
but the two of the big standout roles that were almost cast differently was the brother was Omri Katz, who the role was originally offered to Leonardo DiCaprio, and he turned it down for What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Good
And
trade.
the Kathy Najimy's role, Mary Sanderson, was originally offered to Rosie O'Donnell. And it could have been a very, very different movie given both of those casting choices.
I don't know how I feel about that one. Well, no, I do. I don't like it.
And Sarah Jessica Parker, like, she was known to our parents, most likely, because she came out of the 80s having done, Once Upon a Mattress and Earth Girls Are or not Earth Girls Are Easy. Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
I think oh no, that was Gina Davis that was in Earth Girls Are Easy.
Yeah, but she hadn't done a whole lot in the early 90s off of Broadway, like outside of, doing theater. And then she kind of relaunched.
She was in Flight of the Navigator, I think.
Which again, I mean, that's a niche cult classic.
Yes, but when your mom just wants you to be quiet all summer and you get to rent whatever you want. So yes. All right, let's get a little bit out of the chat here real quick, and then we'll I have a couple more questions just related to this. So Cue Ball says that his memory of this movie was his cousin was 10 years old at the time, and she had it on VHS. He watched it with her and thought it was really campy and dorky. Well, it is, but that's the beauty of it.
Why we love
and
it.
The performance from Sarah Jessica, Bet, and Kathy were so over the top. Absolutely. It was over my head with some of the jokes. Overall, it was a good movie, and Cue Ball gives the rating 4 of 5. Andy says it was a perennial spooky season watch. Yes. Eric also gives 4 out of 5 popcorns. Nom Talk Network says it is so hard to find someone who has never seen this film, or anyone who doesn't watch it during the Halloween season. Yes, and if you do, just stop being friends with them. No, I'm just kidding. Don't stop being friends with them. And then Eric says regarding the moths, it was like a special Ziploc bag in his mouth that was painted black so he could have the moths in his mouth, which reminds me, there's an episode of the X-Files where Gillian Anderson has a cricket. She pops a cricket, like, comes out of her mouth and she pops it back in, and she did that. Yeah, I'm like, just don't eat bugs, people. Come on. And then Andy also says it's wild that Billy Butcher is specifically mentioned as Willifred's ex-lover who cheated on her with her sister Sarah, poisoned and resurrected him to harm children. The content we don't get in kids' film fare. That's true. Cue Ball has redeemed "You're So Punny" for Puma.
Why? Okay.
And my question, actually, I had a question for you, Puma, because one of the things I like about this movie is that even though their family has just moved to town and that Max feels like an outsider, it's really clear that Halloween was a big thing for their family, and Halloween's a big thing in Salem. And that kind of seems to be what helps him mesh into at least kind of being more comfortable in the town when he takes his sister trick-or-treating, until that whole scene where she's like, no, my brother's here and he's gonna protect me. Obviously, look at you look amazing, and you obviously love Halloween. So
I do.
I froze.
Oh no, you're back.
Oh, I'm back.
I was gonna say that, but you fixed it. It fixed itself.
Cool. So with I'm So Punny, talk a little bit about like just how this town celebrates Halloween, and not necessarily with the history of Salem, but just how they kind of go all out and how that really plays into with the Sanderson sisters and how they can kind of use that as their way to come back to life.
Okay. Well, I did my pun. So let's see. What spell do the witches use when they want to focus? Or I messed it up. When they want to concentrate. Focus Pocus. I ruined it, but there I did one. Q.
Very good.
Look, I'm gonna have to like mute Q from like he gives me puns every week and I always suck at them. I'm horrible at puns. But yeah, so I feel like everyone having like the love for Halloween plays into the witches being able to do like their shenanigans and stuff because they're like very like superstitious. They have like their like legend of them. They still have the house kind of like somewhat preserved, like from 300 years ago and stuff like that. So that kind of like helps them kind of have the lore of the superstition and the like what is it called, urban myth of them, all that stuff. So one dumb kid's obviously gonna try this and think like nothing bad's gonna happen. And yeah, so that's pretty great. I love that the parents loved Halloween too. Like the parents were going out and doing their own party. The teenagers kind of were having their own kind of stuff. And then also the little kids were actually trick-or-treating. So it was kind of neat that like I feel like it's very fitting. If you live in Salem, you probably do love Halloween. So I'm sure it's huge. But yeah, I just loved seeing like that all ages were enjoying it. Everybody, like the mom with the Madonna costume was like extra. I was just like the cones, and I'm like the dad. They had the innuendos in that movie though. Like watching it as I got older, I was just like, like I didn't know what it was because I watched it when I was like 4 or 5 in the beginning. So I'm like, but then as I got older, I'm like, they really slid all those like the inappropriate like adults in this movie, and I'm just like, wow. But yeah, I think everyone having the love for Halloween kind of like built up the power behind the myth and the legend of these witches, them being resurrected in like modern day and them kind of like adapting quickly, the kids being able to trick them because they weren't aware of certain materials and things in the movie, and they're like, oh, feels like stone, and it was just really cool to see them kind of like have to adapt like instantly to like this modern day 90s. Pretty much I feel like the town was like more like they only concentrated mostly on like the teens of it, so like this town with like all these crazy teenagers running around, and yeah, I absolutely love it. I love everything about that. So neat. Yeah. I wish I'd probably move to Salem one day, honestly. I've never been, but I would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it's on my list of places to visit. I don't know what Halloween is like there, but I know like year round it's probably a little more somber, but I've heard that Halloween's pretty crazy there. So you can't talk about the iconic casting in this movie without discussing when the witches visit Satan, who is played by Gary Marshall. And then of course Penny Marshall is in that scene also. Toni, what do you think about that scene when they go and visit Satan?
I wonder what I do think about that.
I love it.
That's amazing.
I actually cosplay Medusa. No. I cosplay Penny Marshall's Medusa.
With curlers?
I love it.
I have the curlers. I have got 2 sets of those curlers. I actually remember those curlers. While I was born in 84, so I was a little too young to actually remember using those curlers. My mom let me do that, but yeah, I was like, I know exactly what those are and I know exactly where to find them, and I sure enough did. Yeah, and then my buddy Ralph comes here. He's all dressed appropriately. So yeah, perfect. It's an insanely comfy outfit, but no, I think it was so perfect because it's like, yeah, that's exactly what would happen if sci-fi, and I think this does fall within the realm of sci-fi. It's horror, sci-fi, fantasy. It's genre, right? Genre only works if you really truly believe in it, if you really commit to it. And nobody is more committed than these 3, than Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy. And it's absolutely perfect when you throw Gary and Penny Marshall, just these 2 like very skeptical individuals. They're playing themselves. I doubt they're really playing much of a character at this point. I just love, just the immediate foil of just this very this very, very disagreeable couple, this woman who is just so over it, could not care less that it's Halloween, and then her husband who is just so into it that, you know, they've dressed up the dog, there's, you know, the candy at the door, and he's in his long johns. Like, I just love these two. I thought it was an incredible scene. And then also just the shenanigans of them being in, and that's what I also love about this scene. It's so contained. It's literally within a living room, a kitchen, and a front and the front porch. That's it.
Yeah.
And just immediately within there, like a multitude of just like one gag after the other, whether that's, you know, Mary, you know, scrolling through the television, or Jessica Parker hitting on Gary Marshall, or Winnie just completely enamored with, you know, the child torture chamber in the kitchen. I mean, like, it's just like incredible gags, one right after the other. And none of them are like in particularly any kind of like, you know, fall over laughing, but just like when you package them so tightly right next to each other. I mean, like, it was just like, mwah, incredible. Just like, I miss when we used to write scripts and we didn't just write setups and let SNL alum just like improv the hell out of a scene. I miss when you actually had to recite a couple lines and hit your marks and hit the punchline. I sound so crotchety. I'm so sorry. But yeah, I dig the scene. I love it. I love the gag of putting both Gary and Penny in there, just because even on a meta level, it's just like, yeah, that's exactly who should be right here, right now. Thank you so much.
It's my favorite scene in the whole movie, for sure. So yeah, that scene was hard to top for me. And then we go to the town hall party. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, good. I keep seeing myself frozen on the screen, but I can hear you, so I'm just making sure. So then we go to the town hall party, which has my second favorite scene, which is when Winifred sings "I Put a Spell on You," because anytime I
Oh
no,
we lost her.
We lost her.
Okay. What to do now?
I'm listening to the sounds of my upstairs neighbors blasting music right now.
Oh no. Well, I guess we just hang out then. Okay.
I think. All right. Do you have a favorite moment from the movie? Like, if you had to pick one singular moment.
I mean, the song and dance number is pretty fantastic. I mean, like, it's, again, just pushing the boundaries of like what people are willing to accept. And it's like a song and dance number by Bette Midler. Absolutely. And then when you also know that like Sarah Jessica Parker is a theater kid, Kathy Najimy famously in Sister Act. So I mean, it's like you get these three song and dance chicks all together, and they're not going to sing a song, and they just so happen to like, I Put a Spell on You is pretty iconic in its own right. And then now this version, I think, is the most iconic version, which is kind of incredible when you consider, you know, who, you know, originated the song and who's covered it since, you know, the first original version. So yeah, this number was just beautiful, gorgeous. Also, I did see Bette Midler in concert like 10-ish years ago, and she does this number just because she can. She literally just pops on a red Winnie wig and just a purple little cloak, and she just does a whole 2 minutes of I Put a Spell on You. So yeah,
Why not?
love her.
What about you, Puma? Any like standout moments?
Yeah, actually. So my favorite moment probably would have to be, I'm trying to think. There's so many good moments. I like when let me see. God, there's just so many. I like pretty much almost every scene with Doug Jones is like amazing. Like, he's just like hilarious and like helping them, and his head gets knocked off. I want to say there has to be something like a big one. I'm trying to think of like a big one that's fun. I like the bus scene. It's like, it's so raunchy. Like, I love how horny Sarah is in the entire movie. Like, I'm just like, how did let this horny lady be in a child's movie? She's just walking around, bouncing around everywhere, just like, oh my goodness. But yeah, that's probably just like the bus scene is pretty great. Yeah, I'll probably say that one then.
It's so hard. One of my favorite moments is also one of the moments that like kind of aggravates me a little bit. And again, I apologize if you can hear any of this nonsense above me. As soon as this podcast is over, I'm going to go upstairs and bang on the door. So that at the end, when they are heading into the sunlight, when Winifred turns to stone and the other two just explode.
Yeah.
Why? Like, I love that moment because you're like, yes, you know, justice prevails. But like, why did she turn to stone and then blow up and the other two just blew up? And also, I guess they address it in the sequel, but like, they blew up.
Yeah.
You don't come back from explosion, I think.
Marvel magic.
Isn't that statue like in a Planet Hollywood somewhere, or was in a Planet Hollywood or something? Because that statue definitely survived. I remember seeing it in different places. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Maybe we should track it down. It always makes me sad though, because I just always also believe that they just completely destroy like incredible like movie memorabilia. Like they destroyed the pirate ship from Goonies. Did you guys know that? They literally were like, does anybody want this pirate ship? This obnoxiously large pirate ship that we built for this thing. Does anybody want to take it off our hands? Nobody did. So they had to literally like blow it up. And so that pirate ship from Goonies like was literally just like not even for sale. Literally, they were just like anybody who can take a ship off of our hands. And they ended up blowing up the whole thing off. So then I'm just always like, man, how many like amazing, cool like movie memorabilia that have just been lost just because we didn't have Craigslist.
Someone didn't have a truck to put a boat in, you know. Somebody's uncle didn't let them borrow the truck that weekend.
I pulled up our run through here. I think the next question would have been, you gave it however many popcorn buckets you gave it at the beginning of this conversation. Have you changed your mind? Our producer is asking, how has the film aged for you?
Beautifully.
It holds up.
Yeah. I think when you're trying to not really worry about being classic and eternal, then you actually just like have a better chance of stumbling into something that ages pretty well. Obviously, there are certain things where we're just like, okay, we would not be able to do that specific scene or this specific line in this specific way in 2023, but nothing about those particular things are like somehow so egregious that we feel like we have to like now like throw it into like, it's not Birth of a Nation. You know what I mean? Like it's not Caligula. It's not some like horrific thing where we're just like, maybe we just don't watch that movie ever again because it's so horribly egregious and in bad taste, even by any standard. It's just things that are just like, yeah, in the 90s, that was totally okay. And then not only was it okay, it was just part of the trend of just, you could say virgin in a Disney movie. You could go ahead and have a horny Sarah Jessica Parker running around, eye banging anything within sight. You could go ahead and have Kathy Najimy talk about, eating children, like, and she means it. She totally means it. I think it just ages really wonderfully. I question, because even now where I'm like, I have really nothing really bad to say about the movie. So why am I still stuck at like 4 popcorns out of 5? And I think it's mostly just because it's like, I want more. I wish there was just like a little bit more. But then even before we started this, we were talking about the sequel and I just was like, I want more, but not like that. And I just kind of been stuck in this like thing of like, man, I wish there was just a little bit more, a little bit something else, or it just was, or even to the things that do just kind of stick in my brain where I'm just like, it could have been brilliant if there were 3 statues instead of just the one at the end, instead of just them, combusting into a parade of light. But it's aged well.
Our producer says, Otaku Gakuto, the film had the right balance of tones, from scary to funny, and the stuff that pulls at your heartstrings with our bestest boy Binks. All the practical effects in the film are for the era and time excellent. I
So
agree.
facts.
I agree. And I will say, like, I to this day have hard times with movies where an animal gets hurt. So there were definitely moments with Binks where I was just like, oh God, oh God. But then he just kind of like pops back up until the end. And I think, you know, that part is a little bit predictable now. But as a little kid, you know, this kitty died at the end, and you're like, oh my God, like I don't even care about Thackeray Binks, the human who is reunited with his sister after 300 years. Like, you guys just killed a cat. Like,
I feel that.
definitely pulled at the heartstrings.
Mm.
What about you, Puma? Does it hold up for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's interesting is like this movie kind of like is like for every generation. I feel like it's like for some reason, like it just holds up. Like it's a 90s movie. Like it's most movies try to be a different time era or whatever, and it doesn't always like translate well. But since it is so 90s, I think a lot of people can relate to that because like, you know, 90s had its resurgence where everybody was like kind of doing the style again and like looking up blockbusters and stuff like that. So I feel like having something like this, it's gonna just like keep going forever. I feel like it's one of those movies like it's like the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Like how old is that? And everybody watches it every year for Halloween, like A Christmas Story. Everybody watches that every year. It's kind of like one of those movies that it's just like your grandma probably likes it, your kids are gonna like it. My kids liked it when they were little. So yeah, it's just one of those movies that just holds up, and it's just like there's nothing like it, and nobody can kind of replicate the anything from the movie. Nobody uses practical effects anymore. Everybody does CGI everything. So I feel like that's what made that movie so great. Was just like it was just so campy, and it's just one of those films that will last forever. Not the sequel. Nobody remembers the sequel. We don't talk about her. But first one is great.
Oh, we got Jen back.
Ah.
Now they're banging on the ceiling.
Hi.
Jen,
No
so
comment.
what you missed was we just talked about how the film had aged for all of us.
You know, for me, I don't feel like it. I mean, it probably didn't age great, but I didn't really look at it that way when I watched it this morning. But full disclosure, I was also working. So I couldn't really pay too fine of details, you know, too attention to the details. But I think it's kind of like Roger Rabbit, where I really expected it to have aged poorly and then it didn't. And I was like, oh, okay. Unlike some movies where you watch them and you're like, oh, they did not just say that. So I think it did fairly well for me. And thank you guys. Well, my technical difficulties, I have no idea if it was my laptop, if it was Zoom, maybe it was your neighbors that caused it.
It probably
I'm
was.
not sure. So, or the fly that's buzzing around in here that my cat refuses to hunt for me. I don't know. No, but thank you for carrying that through. Yeah, my computer just went meh. So, but I know we are getting towards the end of our time here, and I have really enjoyed this the conversation. This is one of my favorite movies, and I love that I got to discuss it with three people who also really love this movie, because that always makes it so much better. I mean, it's good to debate a movie with people who may have a different viewpoint, right? But it's more fun to talk about it with people who really love it. Let's face it. So I'm trying to get into my notes real quick. On a computer, you're so cute. So I'm actually kind of almost inclined to say my popcorn bucket rating might change a little bit. If I were asked again, I would probably give it a 5, just because.
Oh no.
No, it's okay. It was because I had to verify that it was me for my 2-step verification for my email. Sorry. But and I've never used Zoom on my phone, so my phone is just like, what are we doing right now? It's so exciting, all these new things. But no, I really appreciate the conversation, and I love the stories that you shared about your first time, because you all had such great recollections of the first time you saw these movies. And it kind of made me sad that I don't remember the first time I saw this movie at all, regardless, let alone vividly, you know? And so I appreciate
I appreciate the sharing of that. It was really cool for me to hear that. But it's always a wonderful time talking with the three of you in any combination. And that's about all the time that we have today to talk about Hocus Pocus from 1993. And as I think I heard someone mention as I came back in, we're not going to talk about the sequel, so that's fine. And I do want to give a shout out to Amanda and Puma and Toni. So Puma, since you're the one who popped up on my screen because I don't know how Zoom on a phone works, tell us where everybody can find you.
Okay, so I try to make it as streamlined as possible. PumaDoesCosplay on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
Awesome. Perfect. Great. Thank you. Toni, how about you?
You guys can find me on all the social media at the Toni Sanchez. It's Toni with an I, Sanchez with a Z.
Great. And Amanda?
I am on the socials at Yollin.
Whoa, I love it.
Perfect. And you can find me at Instagram at do_as_Peggy says. And you can also follow cosplay adventures of mine with my Avengers group at California Avengers. Next week, there'll be lots of fun things to see as we conquer San Diego Comic-Con. So you can watch my insanity unfold. I'm sure you'll see some familiar faces too. So thank you again all for tuning in. I'm sorry I missed some of your chat at the end because I can't do Zoom and Twitch on my phone at the same time. Please be sure to join our Discord to keep the conversation going, as well as subscribing to all our platforms at Nom Talk Network. Tune into our next show on Wednesday, which will be The Conjuring with your host, Eric, heartless there in the chat. Until then, I am your host, Jen, and I hope you all have a nomorific day. Thank you.